of 13th and Waco Streets will allow for a needed expansion at North High School. The seller is RM5DK Corporation, a Delaware corporation. It is recommended the board approve a real estate purchase agreement between RM5DK Corporation, a Delaware corporation, the seller of the property at the northwest corner of 13th and Waco Streets, and the district for a purchase price of $2 million, plus reasonable closing and incidental costs associated with the acquisition.
Well, we are pleased to bring to you tonight a recommendation to acquire this property. We, as most of you know, we've been working for a little over a year now on this transaction. The property is owned by a group from back east, a group of family members that are investors and property investors, and they acquired the property in 2003. So Dillons was actually using leased land, which is quite common for them, to operate that store until 2008 when they decided to close the store. We've been working very hard with those current owners to try to come at to or arrive at a reasonable price for the property, which we're confident we have done. They began by listing the property at $4.5 million. We made a very low offer initially and spent the last several months working towards a negotiated amount that we could agree to, and we are proposing the purchase of the property for $2 million. The slide you see on the screen right now is just an overview of the North High campus. The dotted line, the purple dotted line, probably doesn't show up extremely well on the slide, but that does show you the basic outline of the current North High property. And I would stress to you that North High is still our smallest comprehensive high school property. It's a little over 26 acres. Compare that to 78 acres at Heights, 50-some acres at Southeast or at South High. Of course, Northwest High at 160 acres, which is a little unique. But for a high school of the size of North High, typically by any standards, they would recommend 50 to 60 acres, somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on the extent of outside athletic activity areas. And we have 26 acres. So we have always been interested in property adjacent to North High. It's a very densely populated area, and that property doesn't come easily or available very often, but we're excited to bring this recommendation to you. I always like this particular aerial photo because if you'll note in the lower left corner, it was taken at the time the Manissa Bridge was being renovated, and so the bridge is removed there, and the construction dam is there while they were doing that renovation work. The second slide still shows you the North High property, but it now begins to focus in on the Dillons property with the yellow dotted outline. You do see noted there the existing North High Technology Center also, which sits on our property but does sit immediately adjacent to the west side of the former Dillons. And we are, of course, proposing the acquisition of that Dillons property with the structure that currently exists. A little larger view, and I show this particularly to point out one thing to you. Even though Dillons was leasing this site, it was always their practice and continues to be where they have property to own a small parcel to allow them, should they ever sell the property, to have a little bit of control over what a potential competitor might do with that property. So the small area within the red dashed line is property that is still owned by Dillons and is not a part of this transaction. We took that into consideration in working with them. The fact that that property is owned by Dillons and is positioned in the way it is does not at all prohibit us from utilizing the existing structure if we choose to and making good utilization of the overall site. But I would tell you also that we continue to have continue to work on some discussions with the Dillons management and Hutchinson to look at the possible acquisition of that and in some way that's very favorable to us. This really serves no purpose for them now that with the sale of the property to us, they're basically assured that it would not be a competitor coming in to operate another market facility. So that was always their primary purpose in retaining a small piece of land, even on properties where they leased the remainder for their store operations. So again, it's about 3.5 acres plus the structure, which is a little over 44,000 square feet. As we've discussed with you before, we have no definite recommendations to make to you yet concerning what we will do with the site, but we know there are several options that are appealing, at least as we look at it preliminarily. One being the one that has been talked about somewhat in the media in this last week as this item appeared in the agenda, and that was the concept of studying whether or not it would be a viable use of the existing structure to convert a good part of it to additional career tech ed space for North High. And the location is great because it would even allow us to interconnect it in some way to the existing technology center at North High. And I would remind you that the bond issue plan for North High does call for providing additional tech ed space and expanding that existing technical education center. So it may be that we can look at a concept that would allow us to preserve and use the existing structure for that purpose, and thereby not have to construct new additional space to the technology center. And then, of course, we also pick up a considerable amount of parking to serve the North High campus that we do not currently own. So with that, we would recommend to you that you allow us to proceed with the purchase. If you do so tonight, then we would anticipate we have a certain due diligence period within the agreement for both the district and the current owners to take some action to assure that we want to proceed, and we would envision closing in very late winter or early spring on the property.
Okay.
So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Lynn?
Well, this is exciting too. I have had neighbors, alumni, and students ask me about this on a regular basis, including one who's moved out of state and continues to call me as to when are we going to buy the Dillons store. I do think this will do great things for North. I mean, it still keeps us as the smallest campus. It doesn't even really take us up to 30 acres, but the additional parking alone will be tremendous, and I think what we can do with the building itself will be exciting. So I would move that we take the recommended action.
Second.
Well, okay, you had about 4 seconds. So anyway, Lynn moves and 4 people seconded, so choose who you want to second it. Well, I'll choose Barb. All right. She had the loudest voice. So. All right. And Lynn, you have another comment to make?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead. Oh. Motion passes 7-0, and this is exciting news.
Yes.
And yes, we have been waiting a long time, Martin.
The last thing I guess I would like to say, Connie, is that as soon as we can get that closed and get the barriers out and rearrange the parking for North, that will be greatly appreciated by the patrons of North and the neighborhood as well.
Yes,
So.
I'm sure. Okay, next item, please, Mike.